Hello, I just want to clarify before the episode begins that my setup isn't perfect. I have one microphone, which means that it has to be in between the two of us. So whenever we lean back, the audio goes a bit quiet, and whenever we lean forward, the audio goes a bit loud. I have used compression and like other audio editing tricks to minimize this problem, along with the fact that you can sometimes hear like thuds and vibrations being passed onto the microphone from me hitting the table accidentally, but it can never be as good as a good setup. So like sooner than later I will have a second microphone, and the location will be much better and the setup will be much better. But for now I have tried my best to optimize the audio, so hopefully it sounds alright. The episode was packed with loads of relevant and important information, so I really hope you enjoy it, and thank you for listening. Alright, cool, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the PGP Impartial Discussion, an interview, sort of Joe Rogan-esque type show. Today we have on the show
Victory,
someone that I know from secondary school.
Long time
came to my uni. It's quite mad. It's been like 5 years since we wanted to do this podcast. It's finally
happening.
Yeah, man. So what did you come to talk to us about today?
Well, essentially I just wanted to talk about our brain and the way it's affected by our behavior and our lifestyle. Essentially we all live in in our own societies and in our own cultures, and we're not too aware of the way our behaviors and lifestyle affects the way we perceive the world. And essentially our brain is like the mediator of our perception of reality. I think it's essential you have a good understanding of what you do, how you behave, your environment, how it affects your brain.
Yeah, definitely. It's quite funny that see, this is why it maddened me when you gave me the list of topics, because currently my next episode that I'm gonna make a comeback with, and fully rebrand my podcast, is on perception. And I have I think it's 8,000 words so far written on it. That's as a script thing. Yeah, so this concept of perception in and of itself is so it
reaches out to a lot of topics in it.
It's fascinating how people. This is the thing. Do people on average? Does your average person know that they're living life through this lens?
I don't think. Well, it's easy when you speak to people your age. As you grow from a young kid to a young adult, and you see how people have different life experiences and experience life. Through different things like trauma, or through drug addiction, or also no mistakes. But I mean, when you think about it, your perception of reality can be flawed in ways you cannot know yourself. So
definitely, 100%.
I mean, I don't think a lot of people. I mean, they don't think about that a lot. I don't think. Yeah. And one of my main topics that I feel most interested in is the way the brain changes over time. And most of the things we experience, like pain, for example, people have different pain tolerances or tolerance.
So this is brain elasticity.
Okay. Plasticity actually. So most people, scientists thought that when you reach adulthood, all the brain cells you have, that's it, you don't grow anymore. But obviously a recent research has shown that your brain changes continuously throughout a lifetime. So your brain is completely malleable, incredibly malleable.
So the age normally is 26, 27 when your brain stops.
It's about 25. So
you're saying that it actually doesn't. It just doesn't slow down.
It just actually it slows down in certain ways. So okay, so the deeper you go into your brain, the more primal your brain. I mean, you understand. So the deeper parts of your brain are basically solidified by 25. It can still change, but it's essentially going to stay the same. But
it's we're basically apes deep down.
Deep down. But the more peripheral you get, the more malleable it is. So that's for functions, more high level cognitive functions like learning and planning and all that sort of stuff, and perception as well. So regions responsible for different activities can change throughout time, and our behaviors, plays a big factor in the way it changes. So basically, the mechanism through which like we perceive the world, the main contributor is behavior. So whatever you do is what your brain will adapt to. If you think about the brain,
it's like a feedback.
Yeah, it's like you think about the brain as like an if-then sort of algorithm, like the most complex algorithm in the world in terms of that.
So like, if then as in like if something,
then something. So for example, if like you're in the wild and you see, am I allowed to swear? Yeah, if you see that. If you see like a predator about to chase you, obviously the neurophysiological response in your brain is to release cortisol, adrenaline, all that, and that sort of reaction in your brain can only occur if there's an external stimuli.
So you have essentially an input from the outside world that your brain takes it in, it processes it, and then whatever it can make out, it makes out.
And the key point I want to get from that is that can only be derived from an external stimuli. So it's the hormones are in your brain; they're always readily available, but it takes an external stimuli.
Okay. So you can't just give yourself.
You can't just And when you think about that, there are more hormones and neurotransmitters in your brain that you're not aware of until you get an external stimuli from it. So, for example, we have this hormone called human growth hormone. Now, this hormone, it's basically natural. It's natural steroids, basically. So if you have a lot of it in your body, you can recover quickly. You can grow new tissues very quickly. Muscle, even if you're in a caloric deficit, your muscles are still going to be retained.
Yes,
and that can only be stimulated through an external factor. I'm not going to tell you what it is just yet.
Yeah, that's calm. Basically, before we continue, just for the viewers, for clarity, essentially, where I mean, obviously you told me already, but where did you get all this knowledge from? Because obviously, as you said, you're not a scientist per se. So
I am a natural scientist, actually.
More doctor, actually.
But I only got into this about 2 years ago. When I started to, I think 2 years ago I was what, 18?
Yeah.
18, when you're around 18 to like 21, your body is like maturing properly, and I could feel changes in my body. Not obvious changes, but like
subtle.
Yeah, very subtle, and you can definitely perceive it, and I'm sure a lot of people experience it as well. And it got me thinking about how the way I was living like 2 years ago is much different to the way I live now. So I'm a bit more sensitive to what I do, my actions, my diet, what time I go to bed, what time I wake up, what I do. And when you do this over time, the changes you see is definitely perceivable. So that got me into thinking about what is actually happening at the neurophysiological level.
So essentially, you do a degree in natural science, right?
Yes.
So you do, just in 2 words, what can you explain?
I basically specialize in chemistry, biochemistry, and food science and nutrition.
All right, cool. So that's your degree.
Yeah.
So then also, as you were maturing for the last 2 years, essentially, all the changes that you were experiencing, you actively thought about them, analyzed them, and then...
Actually, I just wanted to try different lifestyles.
Like trial and error?
Trial and error sort of thing, to see what works for me, what changes I see. If I like them, I stick to it. If I don't, I leave it. And most of these things I only found out what's actually happening at the cellular level after I've tried them out. For example, I practice fasting regularly, and the changes I saw were very evident. Again, I'm not going to get into that just yet until I move on from that.
So you basically. So this is kind of like, it kind of brings me back to the initial question that I asked, and I can't remember if I asked it on there or not, but I feel like a lot of people don't actively try to, it's not that they don't try to, but it's kind of like maybe they can't really perceive the changes that are going on, or if they do perceive them and they do notice them, they don't really pay that much attention to them, and
yeah.
they don't see the benefits that you can get from actively like essentially
changing the way you
Yeah.
live.
Yeah.
I think most people are just ensconced in I don't want to say bubble, but when you have a routine in your life, you don't really want to stop and think, about what's going on.
Yeah, change is not.
Yeah, it's not really something
People
we
like
want.
doing.
Yeah, and I think it takes a lot to get into a place where you start to think about how your mental state is changing. I think you have to go. Well, for me, I went into a sort of isolated place. You know, I don't know if most people go through that, but you might come to a point in your life where you just want to be isolated, and just you start thinking about deeper things beyond yourself. Like what's the meaning of life?
That's basically what happened to me for like the first 2 years of uni.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up as well, because I knew as well. That's what happened to me as well, and that's what got me into this. So I think when people start actually thinking about thinking beyond their daily life, school, work, that's when they start to pay attention to this sort of stuff.
See, and how would you say to like an average person? Because obviously I know a few people who just work and they don't really like to change the routine or something like that. How would you say? Like, what would you start with?
I would ask them, are you happy with your life? Are you happy with the way you're going through your life? Do you feel content? And if the answer is yes, my response would be, would you want to improve it? If the answer is no, then I'll talk about the factors that they can change, the simple things they can change to purely improve the perception of their life. Not to improve their life per se, but the perception of it. Obviously, improving your life is obviously a good thing, but most of the time, it's not that you're doing something wrong or what you're doing is harming you, or it could be, but sometimes it's just the way you perceive it and the way you react to it that's important.
Have you read or like heard of Jordan? I'm assuming you heard of Jordan Peterson, right?
I don't know any 20-year-old who hasn't.
Yeah,
okay,
cool. Have you read anything like? Have you read his book 12 Rules for Life, or like watched any of his lectures?
I've watched some of his lectures.
Yes.
I've read sections of 12 Rules of Life. A lot of those things are just practical.
That's why his book blew up to it, because it's very practical with a lot of deep.
Yeah, it doesn't really tell you how. Well, it doesn't really tell you like at the neuro level what's going on. But obviously, when you put those things in practice into your life, you're definitely going to see a difference. And he what I like about him is that he stresses responsibility. Taking personal responsibility, and that's the first way to control your life. And basically, that's my message today as well, but on a more sciencey level. Yeah.
Have you heard of the locus of control?
No.
Okay, basically, my friend Joel told me about it. Basically, it's a locus of control is essentially what. See, I don't actually know it myself. I just got it from what he said on the first Google search. But basically, it's kind of like what people. Let me take it from a different angle. So you have the inner and you have the outer locus of control. And essentially, if you have the inner locus of control, you feel like everything in life happens because of you from the inside. If you have the outer locus of control, you believe that everything happens in life because it's set to be. So like very deterministic, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically like that. So I feel like what we both have, and like a few other people, is we have a very inner locus of control. So like this belief that if you don't like something in your life, or if something in your life isn't going the way you planned, you have the ability to change it, and you can change it. And this is kind of like where perception comes in, because usually it's the perception of the situation that changes rather than anything else.
I got a bit deep. Let me lighten up a bit.
So we started off by saying, I asked you, where'd you get this information from? So obviously, like, I'd just like to reiterate to anyone who's listening, we're not like scientists, but essentially what we have done is through personal experience, trial and error, and like reading here and there and watching stuff here and there, we have pretty much have like, what's the word? Is it qualitative?
Qualitative.
Yeah, so we have like qualitative evidence of these things working. So it's not like we're trying to instill like any sort of belief that we know everything. No, it's just that like we've experienced stuff and we're trying to, let them out into the world and let the world know. So so we started talking about brain plasticity.
Actually, something that might surprise a lot of people is, well, what I've learned over the years is about the brain gut connection, like are you aware of that? Like the gut and the brain. Yeah. Like the amount of connections are actually incredible. Like, so for example, we have like 500 million neurons in our gut compared to the brain, which has about 300 million. Which is a bit crazy.
Mad. That is mad. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and in the gut we have got like so the top layers are filled with like projections of villi, and then within those villi there are microvilli, smaller projections, and underneath that we've got an epithelium. This is where all the nerve cells are. And
wait, what's a projection? Sorry.
Projections are like finger like
the things
like the
taken,
things, and obviously when nutrients.
Wait, so it's like the things that absorb the
absorb nutrients in the stomach, in the gut, in the intestine, so when nutrients are what mainly absorbs the nutrients are the microbes in our body, and just for definition's sake, like a microbe is like an individual sort of bacteria, and microbiota is like the collective noun for the different sorts of microbes you've got in your body. Now, the connection gets fascinating when you think about the fact that 90% of serotonin that you produce in your body, in your entire body, is in the gut. And if you know what serotonin is, it's the hormone or neurotransmitter, I'm not sure which one, responsible. Responsible for happiness and well-being, which is crazy, and that's responsible for, and that's produced in your gut.
That is mad.
Another example of the connectivity, is so basically there was a woman who received like a fecal microbiota transplant from her daughter. Now, what that means is basically they took shit from her daughter and put it in her gut to transfer the sort of microbiota in for a healthier gut, because she was suffering from Clostridium difficile infection.
Okay, see.
Now, her daughter is she's overweight but otherwise healthy. Now, a few months later, her mum got overweight as well.
Oh, so she's developed.
She's developed not obesity, but she got fat. And
is it like from an addiction? I mean,
not from addiction, from just the connectivity between the microbiota and the appetite was not clear. But from getting the same bacteria that was in her daughter into hers, she somehow got fat just like her daughter.
Yeah. So is it because she wanted to eat more because of this new bacteria?
Sort of. It's the way she metabolized the food she was eating.
Oh, okay. So it's not like she just
it's not
ate
like
more.
Oh,
okay, cool.
Actually, the connection was not really clear, but
first.
What was confirmed that there was a connection, despite the fact that she was trying to exercise, diet, and all that. Now, what's even crazier, well, you might think it's crazy or not, but in mice, because you can't, the sort of research is not entirely ethical. You can't just take someone's microbiota to try experimenting, because humans are right, but in mice, so scientists have tried to determine how the gut microbe affects personality as well. So which is crazy, but mice who have let's say more risk-averse personalities. Wait, risk-averse is more likely to take risk, right? Oh no, the opposite. Okay, you could cut that out. So let's just call it anxious mice. When
anxious mice.
when they have the microbiota of mice who are less anxious inserted into them or transplanted into them, they showed less anxiousness. So the way they measure this is by putting them on high platforms, seeing how long they take to take the risk to jump. So obviously anxious mouse take longer than non-anxious ones. So when it was implanted into the anxious ones, it took about on average 1 minute less than otherwise. So
is it like 1 minute or like 2 minutes or like 1 minute?
1 minute or 4.
Oh, okay. Oh,
So
25%.
Yeah, which that's
Yeah,
some might say
very
that's significant,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
which is incredible.
That is mad.
Yeah.
90%, you know.
90%. So,
That's crazy.
but going back to humans, obviously, when doctors and nutritionists say to eat fiber and quality food, it's not just a trivial thing. Like there's an actual neurochemical benefit from that. So fiber helps your microbiota develop more quote unquote good, for lack of a better term, good germs or bacteria. Sorry.
Yeah.
So the more diverse your gut biome is, the better. And things like fats and oily fish, high quantity, producing high quantities in the human brain, like omega-3, and it helps to reduce risk of brain disorders, and that when I found that out, that actually got me paying attention more to my diet, seeing how far I could take this, like if it can affect personality. Obviously it affects your body composition and all that sort of thing.
So have you noticed that significant enough change?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, and the brain's so sensitive to your body composition. Like if you over 2 months develop 20% body fat, like the biomechanical change will be, you definitely notice. So the way you walk, the way you move yourself, the way you feel when you get up in the morning, you feel a difference. And your brain tries to adapt to that through, because obviously movement is a motor skill, and every motor skill is mediated through the brain, so you have to pay attention to that. And that brings me, do you want to say that? Did you want to ask something?
Oh yeah, basically I want to ask I want to ask one thing essentially. So do you feel like it's explained if how you said that nutritionists, when they say eat more healthy, they're actually coming at it from a very eat more healthy and then your personality will be better, you will improve, your mental health will be higher, whatever. I've never actually heard any nutritionist, any advert, anyone or thing ever say that, or for example that 90% of your serotonin comes from the gut. I've heard them say you are what you eat, so obviously if you eat healthy you're going to be more healthy. And when I started eating more healthy, I have noticed a significant change. First year, second year of uni, when I lived in accommodation, I was eating so badly, and it was just
terrible.
Peak. But as soon as I moved into the house, it's just it's been very, very nice. But so do you feel like if there is an explanation as to why we should eat more healthily, but a deep explanation what you just told me, do you think more people will pay attention?
Definitely, 100%. The thing about nutrition is it's so fucking complicated. Because so many people, just humans are so different. So many people react differently to different foods. You hear of all sorts of allergies, and that's extreme cases. But normal cases, people have different reactions to different foods. But if you take the common denominator, which is just taking responsibility for the way you eat, that it goes far beyond your physical composition. It affects the brain a lot more, and I think people when they hear that sort of message, I feel like they'll resonate with it a lot more, because who doesn't want to improve the way they perceive the world, their happiness? I can't think of a better advertisement. I mean, it maybe because a lot of nutritionists are sponsored by food companies, or there's a certain agenda behind messages.
It's pretty much always an agenda behind stuff.
Basically, I mean, I don't want to lay the blame there, because I think there is some benefit to that, but
it's definitely not as good as it could be.
I mean, as the main advice I'll give is just to look at the way it will impact your life. Do the research yourself, see what the actual science is, and see if it's sort of applicable to you. Trial and error, basically. Try it, see if it works. If not, get off it.
Scene. Okay, cool. Do you think it's a lot easier to do when when you have a lot more freedom with what you buy and how much. Like for example, when you're in university, you may not have that much money to buy like whatever you want and all that stuff. Or like when I was in accommodation, I only had one shelf in the fridge, so like I couldn't buy a lot more food or whatever like that.
Yeah.
So do you feel like when people live like on their own, or like when they go back to home and then they just work and live, do you feel like it'll be a lot easier for someone in that position to take in what you just said? And like,
yeah, I mean, the more control you have over your diet, the better.
yeah.
So if you, like for example, in my case, and what actually got me into nutrition in the first place was being broke. So I use that as an excuse to start fasting because use that as an excuse to start fasting. And like since I started fasting, I've seen the benefits. So I'll just explain the different types of fasting there is. There is intermittent fasting, which is actually intermittent fasting has like 3 different kinds of fasting in it as well. But you basically eat for a period of time, and you don't eat for an extended period of time. So you can have 16 to 8 in a 24-hour period. So 16 hours fasting, 8 hour eating, and you can vary that as much as you want, but obviously 16 minimum for fasting.
Yeah. So like for example, like you wake up, but then from 12 to 6, like from 12 to 8, you can eat, but then after 8 or before 12, you can't.
Yeah. Basically. Yeah. And when I started doing that, the changes I saw in my mood, my body composition, was incredible. Like after a month, like I just couldn't stop fasting. Like I started at some point, I didn't even like food, but obviously that's like a healthy point. When you get to that point, you need to stop. And
that's unhealthy.
Yeah, that's unhealthy. If you obviously your relationship with food has to be healthy. You can't hate food, but you can't basically just eat to live, don't live to eat. So control the way. Look at food as a fuel for your body, but also consider like social aspects.
That's pretty much like a very good way of looking at it. Like you won't fill up a petrol car with diesel. Yeah. So like, why are you filling up your body with constant fast food when you should be filling up with things that will actually, improve your biochemical composition? I suppose. Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, and the thing about fasting as well is like when you fast for about 12 hours. Your body releases human growth hormone.
See, the great. No more. Looks like I'm fasting now.
It's
12 hours.
That's when your body starts releasing growth hormones. After 16 hours, your body starts to.
Looking aged.
After 16 hours, your body starts to. Your glycogen storage is like. Basically depleted after 12, but depending on who you are and how fat you are.
Yeah, so 12 on average.
Yeah, 12 average, but 16 hours definitely your glycogen storages are gone, and that's when you start to release more free fatty acids in your blood, in your blood. So your metabolism entirely changes. So you're running on a completely different fuel. I'm gonna get to that when I talk about another diet called keto diet.
Keto diet, yeah. One of my friends is on it.
Yeah, I'm not going to advocate for it. I'm just going to explain what it does. Of course. And after 24 hours, your body starts to release a chemical known as
well, as you're looking for the chemical, I just want to say like my one of the friends that I live with now. He's like a bodybuilder, like a professional bodybuilder, and he obviously knows like pretty much everything there is to know about like your body and like nutrition and stuff like that. Yeah. And he did also advocate for intermittent fasting because he said he didn't say exactly what you said now, but he said about the human growth hormone. But he did say that if you have like this period, let's say you only eat from midday, so 12 to 6 p.m. in that period, that's if you do that for like a month, then your body gets accustomed to only digesting food in that time. So like so before that and after that, your body's not trying to digest any food, so it's not using the energy on digesting food, but instead it's using the energy on like
other things like your brain. Basically that's exactly right. So your body adapts to your new eating window, and that's basically what you find in nature as well. Like most animals, like lions and bears, they go days without eating. Yeah,
and when they get very hormonal,
and obviously they have to adapt. Like in the wild, if you don't find food for 24 hours, you're not just gonna die. Your body has to find a way to adapt to it.
Yeah.
And that's the way I sort of look at it. So our ancient ancestors, basically, they could go days. It wouldn't make sense for them to die off just because they can't eat in one day.
Yeah. That's the example I gave as well.
And the chemical I was actually talking about is called BDNF, called brain derived neurotrophic factor. It's basically, for lack of a better term, brain fertilizer. So it just acts like
what does it stand for? So brain
derived neurotrophic factor.
Okay, see.
Yeah, so basically it just allows neurons to grow new branches so they can make more connections with other neurons.
Oh, mad.
Yeah.
And that's after 24 hours of
That's
fasting.
after 24 hours of fasting.
It's like, I'm not eating tonight. What? That is mad.
It protects against like cell death, neurons dying off, and constant not constant practice, regular fasting has been linked to like longevity. Yeah, and caloric restriction as well, but I don't really advise caloric restriction because that's hard to maintain.
Yeah.
But I do recommend fasting. Also, you might be pleased to know that a lot of the great minds in history, like Plato and Mark Twain, they fasted for quote unquote mental clarity, which is definitely a real thing. When your body switches fuel, and less energy is going to your digestive system and more to your more metabolically demanding organs like your brain.
Yeah, so it switches fuel from food to the human growth hormone.
No, not human growth hormone. Human growth hormone is completely different. That's for repairing damages in your body, like in like your muscles, your joints, your skin.
Oh, so that's the natural steroid, essentially.
Yeah, basically.
Cool.
When your body switches fuel to keto, well, I'm gonna get into that later. But
cool.
When your body switches fuel, and most of the energy is going towards your brain, and your digestive system's given a break to reset, you tend to get a sort of high. A lot of people report a high after like 24 hours.
It's kind of like delusion.
Not delusion. It's just everything seems clear, which makes sense because when you're in the wild and you've gone 24 hours without food,
you need to increase your senses.
You need to increase your concentration and your ability to to think quickly. Another advantage of that as well is going back to the gut. After 24 hours, your gut starts to reset. So all the quote unquote bad microbes die off, and the good ones stay, or they take longer to die off. So your gut is sort of resetting itself, and
See,
good for you, basically.
Would you oh damn, I had a question, but I completely forgot it. Yeah,
Another advantage as well, because when you eat, you release dopamine in your brain. And when you go an extended period of time without eating, when you eat, eventually, when you break it fast, food tastes so good.
Yeah.
So good. And, you sort of reset your dopamine receptors, because when you're constantly eating, your dopamine response decreases because your brain reacts to novelty. And
so this is kind of like when it comes to like addiction with actual drugs. So like if you keep using them, then the dopamine that you get from them decreases. So you have to take more. It's
more the case with sugar is completely like the chemical reaction in your brain that occurs when you eat sugar is completely different to like normal food. With sugar, it doesn't go down at all, but you do need more.
Wait, so what do you mean by it doesn't go down?
So if let's say you eat
the endorphin thing doesn't go down.
The dopamine.
Sorry.
It doesn't go down. So if you eat like a well-balanced, nutritious food today, you eat it tomorrow at the same time, the next day at the same time, eventually the novelty wears off. But with sugar, it's not the case. You have to the dopamine levels doesn't go down when you eat sugar. In fact, it stays the same, and you need more to get the same reaction, which seems counterintuitive, but it's because dopamine is sort of like a reward neurotransmitter in your brain. So it's like it's sort of it's produced when you don't expect something to feel good, but it does. So you seek it out a bit more. So when you seek it out a bit more, it produces that reaction a lot more as well. So it's like a cycle. That's why you get a lot of that's why you get sugar addiction, basically.
So it's essentially, I think Peterson was the one who said it. So he said it with regards to what you just said in regards to dopamine, and then he also said the other side of the spectrum with regards to like embarrassment, essentially. So what I'm talking about is kind of like your brain is, you have your cognitive consciousness, right? The thing that you used to think and stuff like that, obviously, like your manual like transmission, essentially. But then you also have the automatic, like the subconscious. And what Peterson said was that your brain obviously naturally, whenever you do something that benefits it, that's when it releases dopamine, so that you go do it more and more and more.
You seek it out a lot more.
Yeah, and then from the other side of the coin, whenever you do something that your brain notices isn't good, like for example, I don't know, let's say you wet your pants in school or whatever. You feel embarrassed and are very embarrassed, and the reason why you feel very embarrassed is because it's a very natural reaction by your brain to make you feel so uncomfortable and hate that moment so much that it never happens again. So
it's like a feedback loop, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like a very feedback loop's the word, really.
Still on diet, I'm gonna talk about the ketogenic diet now.
Oh wait, before you go, what's the difference, well, if you know, obviously, between serotonin, dopamine, and endorphins? Because they're all kind of like happy chemicals, but
sort of. With the thing with dopamine is that it's, a lot of people think it's sort of what makes an experience pleasurable when it's releases, but no, it's more of a like, it's to help you recognize something that's pleasurable, something that would elicit a positive.
So then you want it.
So you want to seek out more. So dopamine is not the actual pleasure causing hormone. That's other hormones like opioids and endorphins and serotonin and
cool. So dopamine is kind of like the vehicle.
It's, so if you don't expect to get pleasure in something, the first time you do it and you get pleasure from it, the dopamine will go up, and the more you keep doing it, the brain knows, okay, doing this will cause a good feeling, so the dopamine goes down. There's no point releasing, so it doesn't feel new to do it again.
Cool. And what's the difference between endorphins and serotonin?
Endorphins are the actual feel good chemicals, the ones that actually do make you feel good. So I think serotonin is different from endorphins. That's involved in serotonin is more to do with your overall sense of well-being, happiness, that sort of stuff.
So you say one's kind of like breadth, one's kind of like depth, or nah?
I won't lie to you, I'm not an expert.
That's cool. Fuck it. Right, cool. That's pretty much just like, it's the clarity between dopamine and then all the others, essentially, that I feel like it would be quite key to clarify. So so now you said keto diet. One of my friends is on a ketosis diet right now. He's been on it for like a month. He literally said he went from, I think, like getting tired from playing football after like 5 minutes to playing a full match. He didn't get tired at all.
I remember when I was on it about a year ago and playing football, because my body was still sort of new to it. It was literally like playing football high. At that time, I was 3 days deep into it. Actually, first of all, before we get into that, let me just talk about what it actually is. So the ketogenic diet is basically restricting your carbohydrate intake by, depending on who you are, by at least 50 grams. So most of your fuel will come from fats and proteins. About I think 70% from fats, and then the rest from proteins, something like that. That ratio. And basically, it's just it mimics starvation in the sense that it switches your main fuel from glucose to fats, and that's like, by glucose I mean carbohydrates, which is mainly stored and stored in the muscles and the liver. It's basically deplete that, and then when you're deprived of dietary carbohydrates, like the liver becomes like the sole provider of glucose for your organs, especially your brain, because that's responsible for like most of your energy expenditure. Now, when you're in that sort of state.
Oh, before we go into that, so I think he said that it's basically eating foods that are available back when we were like prehistoric days. Is that right?
I'm not sure about the ancestral roots of keto.
Because he said that you can eat like meat, you can eat things that they could find in the wild back then.
Yeah, I had a friend who advocated for that as well, to only eat things that you'd find in the natural world.
I feel like we both have friends who have done stuff like this. Is mad. Cool.
But what I think what he was talking about was the paleo diet, which is just finding things that are, eating things that you'd find in the natural world. So that would include potatoes. I mean, you'd find potatoes in the natural world. And that's very starchy. But the difference is keto, you cut out most of the carbs. And then when you do that, your body switches to what we call ketone bodies. Now these ketone bodies are formed from when you
ketone bodies sounds like an army.
The mainly derived from your fatty acids from the diet you're eating and the body fat that you already have. So that's why a lot of people use it for weight loss, or beg your pardon, fat loss. But you might be asking now, with your glucose level,
you need like a black cat on your lap, fam.
You might be wondering like, when your glucose level will like plummet, and which is like sort of dangerous. It will, but even whether you eat any carbohydrates, your body will always find glucose, and this is mainly done through conversion of amino acids to carbohydrates, mainly to glucose, mainly to feed your brain.
So you get it from protein, essentially.
Yeah, basically. So when you break down, the liver breaks down amino acids to feed your brain, and now the reason most people go on this diet, which, let me just be clear, I'm not an advocate of it, because I'm not too sure about the long term. Like the studies on this is still quite limited, diets come and go.
So essentially this is a discretionary notice. Please, if you were to follow the keto diet,
consult
do it
your doctor, please.
Yeah, consult with the doctor, do it at your own risk. Do not blame
victory
for any issues encountered, if there were any. But
so as I said, when your body switches to this fuel, ketone bodies, it's said that it's more efficient for the brain to, like, it's a more efficient fuel for your brain, and it's more efficient in the sense that you get more energy per oxygen molecules you burn in your body. Like, I'm not going to get into the biochemistry of metabolism, but the essential message is that it's more efficient for the brain, and a byproduct of like normal cellular metabolism that's using glucose is that you get oxidants in your brain, and these are like oxygen molecules with a single electron. I don't want to get too which makes them really highly chemically reactive. And when you have these sorts of molecules in your cells, and you've got proteins and cell membranes, you're gonna do a lot of damage to your cells. But with a keto diet, that's completely bypassed. So 1, you get fat loss. 2, it's a more efficient fuel for your brain. 3, which is not so obvious, is that most foods that you eat on a keto diet, they don't really fill you up, in the sense that you don't get bloated. But they're very calorically dense, so you feel satiated.
So like red meat.
Yeah, like red meat. If you eat a lot of red meat, you're gonna feel satiated but not bloated. So I mean, a lot of benefits for with keto, and
essentially it doesn't fall for anyone who doesn't know, right?
Pardon?
What's the word? Accentuated? Or
satiated.
So
you
like
feel full.
Yeah.
Sort of suppresses your appetite. And another thing is that going back to the brain, because that's the main focus of why I'm actually interested in this is over long term your cognitive function tends to increase, because obviously you're on a more efficient source of fuel, and a lot of researchers showed that it slows down to degenerative age-related brain diseases. Increases the amount of mitochondrial enzymes and energy metabolism in the hippocampus, which I'm sure most of you know is is the part of your brain that's responsible for memory and learning, and so it's actually used to treat a lot of degenerative diseases for old people.
The keto diet.
The keto diet, so like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. It can even be used to cure depression in some people, but obviously everyone's different, and people.
When you say a lot of research, how big is this a lot of research?
It's quite big. If you go on Google, the ultimate knowledge repository, you'll find a lot of studies that show a lot of keto studies, and the literature on this is quite extensive. Like it's not like something you'd find on some dodgy website.
Yeah, so it's not like 2-3 dodgy articles from Vice.
It's a lot of. In fact, a lot of people. It's quite a recent thing, but the research actually goes way back into the 50s. It's just not a traditional diet,
Yeah,
you won't find a lot of diets in the world that are just ketogenic. Most people eat whatever's available, and carbohydrates are the most available.
It's quite mad. I think I don't want to get this too wrong, but I was watching this YouTuber. Yeah. It's called What I've Learned, I think. Yeah. And he basically does he experiences something, does some research, and he makes a YouTube video. Yeah. And one of the things that he said was that the reason why Americans are a bit overweight compared to Japanese people is there was a marketing campaign, I believe, in early 1900s or 1950s, where the
food pyramid.
Yeah, so that food pyramid got released, and it was bread and carbohydrates is the main source.
Yeah, about 70% of your daily intake in it.
Yeah, but then so that was mass publicized. But then even though before that, when people weren't obese in America, it just wasn't that. Really. Yeah. So this one thing came along. It's kind of like that guy who released the paper that vaccines cause autism. So this one thing got released, it got bare whatever. But I mean that
attention.
Yeah, that's just more from attention. Whereas this is kind of a actual marketing campaign. I believe it was the food pyramid.
It was by the government.
Yeah. So why did they? Because you said you know in it.
I think there was. This might be pure conjecture, but there might have. I think that was when the U.S. government was really into controlling its agricultural, basically trying to secure food security, and when there was a surplus of farmers who they incentivized to produce more carb-based foods like potatoes, wheat, all that stuff. When there was a surplus and they couldn't just dump it in some next market, they had to find a way to get rid of the surplus that the government had bought. So they did a scheme that they thought of was basically to advertise carbs as the healthy thing. So there'll be an increased demand for that. But that might just be pure conjecture.
What's conjecture?
Just speculation.
Oh right, yeah. I'm from what I gathered, I don't think it is, not gonna lie. Because literally the guy in the video, he didn't really. I think he also said don't take my word as gospel. But it really went from no one being fat to everyone being fat after this one market thing, and I feel like it's quite a good evidence, I suppose, for the keto diet.
Yeah.
In a way.
A lot of studies are a bit short term, so they only follow people for a couple of months or a couple of years. So the effect of a lifetime it hasn't been studied. That's why I'm not really gonna advocate for it, because most nutritionists will tell you that basically you need to try to get every micronutrient into your diet. That's the most secure way to have a good long life. But the general message is eat good food and your brain will reward you for it.
So would you say that maybe going for like a 2-month keto diet, and then obviously I know that you're not advocating or anything like that. You say like going maybe on like a 2-month keto diet, getting the benefits from that, then moving on to like start add carbs a bit, like, you know, have like a very nice balanced.
Yeah. The way I use keto is if I'm feeling fat, I jump on it for a couple of weeks or months. So it basically use it as a tool. Like if you know there's a time period that you want to get something, or you want like if you're feeling brain fog, or you just want a sort of different cognitive function, try it, see how it works for you, and get off it, but slowly, because it's actually quite dangerous to jump on it and jump off it, very regularly, because
so
your
what
body.
would you say should the transition period be? Like a week?
I'm not an expert, but I would say month. Like
a month.
If you're gonna be on it, if you're gonna be doing it regularly, cycle off a month or so. Yeah.
So it's kind of like if you want to have like let's say you have brain fog, as you said, or like you just want to lose fat. Yeah. And you want to go on it for like 2 months. Do you just like gradually reduce carbohydrates, and then at some point you just reverse and gradually increase them again?
For me, the way I would start is just, I mean, depends on what level you are, but the way I usually start, I'll just the best way to get yourself in ketosis is just to fast for like 24 hours, and then your body's already in fat burning mode. So when you eat and you eat like a keto meal, it's just like continue from there. So the only energy source you get is from fat. Like, and I think there was a recent fad about this in like Silicon Valley. Like a lot of executives were talking about bulletproof coffee, which sounds like the nastiest thing. And what it is they'll you can look it up. It's like they'll add butter to their coffee every morning, and without them knowing what ketosis or ketogenic diet was, you know, they claim to have some sort of mental clarity from that. I've never actually tried it.
Adding butter to what does that do? So butter's
fat. So and coffee's like 0 calories, and
it's like a little short and deadly version of keto.
Basically, just forces you into keto.
See. Valuable keys in this episode. I love it. Cool.
Another behavior that actually affects your brain, like this is like one of the greatest ones that people talk about, but the benefits that they mention are, for me, not the ones that we should be focusing on, is exercise. Okay,
well, just a little roundup. So we were just discussing the diets and why you are where you eat, and essentially eating healthy is the key. And there are a few things that you can do, for example, like the keto diet. Obviously, again, we're not advising anything like here, do it at your own discretion, but so nonetheless, essentially the point of that whole segment was, you know, eat healthy, and then you will notice significant enough, like statistically significant changes for the better in your body, in your mental clarity, in your behavior, performance, everything like that. So that was the gut-brain connection. So now we're talking about the exercise. Yeah, cool.
Exercise. Someone, I don't remember, it's terrible for me, but someone once said that if exercise was a drug or a pill, it would be the most expensive or the most in-demand pill in the world, because of what it actually does to the body. Now, when you exercise, actually, let me just start off by saying, by the age of 21, your IQ sort of steadily declines.
As in after 21?
After 21, it's sort of so... Jeez, are you 21?
No,
I'm going to be 21 this year.
Oh, lucky G. Next time. I mean,
good thing I banged gym.
Nice.
So, basically, what exercise does... Like the main proponents of exercise, what they would usually tell you is, you know, good heart. What does that mean? Not to the average person, not much, unless like you're an old person. That doesn't really mean much to you. If you're a young person, you already have a good heart. But what they mean by you get a good heart, you improve your heart, is, you know, your heart becomes stronger, is able to pump more blood. the more you exercise, the more capillaries. If you don't know, that's like the smallest blood vessel you have in your body, which transports blood to actual
Brain,
cells.
lungs.
Yeah, in your brain and that sort of stuff. And when you have, which is sounds like common sense, but when you have increased and better efficient blood flow, especially to your main organs like blood, which needs glucose, which again, as I said earlier, is like 20% of your energy expenditure, you're gonna have better brain performance. That's like one of the main benefits from exercise. And the thing is, exercise, both resistance training, which is like weights, anything that includes that involves you resisting against some sort of force, and aerobic training, so like running, all that sort of stuff. It slows down the rate at which your IQ declines after 21. I think Jordan Peterson talks about that in one of his lectures as well.
So by giving you a stronger heart, which is able to pump more blood and be more efficient with your
glucose, oxygen, the transport of blood throughout your body,
so that
all those accumulate to better brain performance and slows down the rate at which your cognitive decline happens.
Do you know about how, like, is it a significant slowdown?
It is a significant slowdown. I can't give you numbers because I've never actually heard any numbers. All I've heard, I've heard what psychiatrists and psychologists say, and you know, there is a positive correlation between, a negative correlation between exercise and IQ decline. And when you actually exercise, there's like a 30 for aerobic training for over 20 minutes. So if you run like 20 minutes 3 times a week, you get like a 32% increase in that special brain fertilizer I mentioned earlier, BDNF. And let me just repeat what that was. That was the brain derived neurotrophic factor.
So you get it after 24 hours of not eating,
and
20 minutes of running 3 times a week.
Yeah, exercise. Any sort of exercise. Yeah. And if I'll just go back to what the benefits are. It literally prevents your cells from dying. And which is, I don't know, it's a pretty good benefit. Prevent your neurons from breaking down. And the way this was found out was actually some neuroscientists isolated this chemical BDNF and, for lack of a better term, sprinkled it on some neurons. And what they found was that it was able to make more links between the dendrites of neighboring neurons and strengthens it, so signals are amplified. That means better communication in the brain.
So essentially you're faster, more faster, quicker, better.
So it, like this is not like some trivial thing that some peripheral researchers made up. Like even the Taiwanese government, like I think in the early 2000s, they increased the times that their kids spend in school by an hour just to accommodate more PE time. And like there's a huge link between exercise and academic performance. So literally the benefits are incredible. Like it's like the single greatest drug, quote unquote drug, they can use. A lot of psychiatrists recommend as part of like a recovery sort of program for depressed people. Obviously I'm not saying exercise is like the one and greatest cure of depression. Obviously that's a complex mental disease, but because of the effect it has on the brain, so it also like increases the brain's capacity to store dopamine and triggers creation of dopamine receptors in the brain. So you know, you notice after you sort of engage in some sort of active, like literally rigorous activity, you feel some sort of a sense of accomplishment afterwards. Definitely. I mean, you feel tired, you feel fatigued, but you feel like you've achieved something.
100%.
And that's why it's part of a lot of treatments for depression. For just purely for that.
I might have to make an episode probably particularly talking about depression, because I feel like there's a lot of things that everyone can do, and like a lot of things what people tell them to do. Like for example, exercise. People say, yeah, go exercise, you know, you'll feel better. But no one really, like, what I've realized when I was younger is that I never learned anything until I was explained why it happens.
To do. Yeah.
So like for example in science, like I'll never learn why that electrons are around protons and neutrons until I realized that, like, until I was told that you know, electrons are negatively charged, protons are positively charged. You know, someone showed me a magnet, whatever.
And
so like so I feel like when people say things like go exercise, or like, you know, get out the room, tidy your room, for example, get some responsibility on your shoulders, essentially, by not explaining why exactly that will help, a lot of people who are like in that position of depression or just low mood or wherever it is, they don't really, their brains can't naturally follow the path of, okay, cool, I've been told this, so let me go do it because I know it will benefit me. There's kind of like that skepticism involved. And obviously in the state that you're in, the skepticism is a lot more, like the pessimism on that outlook is a lot more
amplified.
Yes, like amplified, So like so you essentially, by explaining why exercise.
That's kind of like me as well. Like if I'm going to do anything, or I'm advised to do something, I need to know why. Because you know, otherwise it's just like
just empty words.
It's just empty. Like when I explained to one of my housemates, you know, why why I went to the gym a lot. They said it just seems like punishment. And at first, it definitely was punishment. Like I felt like I was putting my body through hell for nothing. But after a while, when you see the changes, it becomes like, if you don't do it, you know, if you don't go to the gym, or if you don't engage in some sort of physical activity, you just feel like you haven't done yourself any good. Because you know what exactly you're getting from it. Especially when you do the research. Most of the things I talked about, I only did it to, you know, try something new, because I could see that my body was sensitive to the changes I make in my life. So when I try something new and I see that there's a change, I go look it up, you know, do the research and see what's actually happening. And then when you have that knowledge that, you know, what you're doing is actually benefiting you, there's a strong incentive to continue engaging in that.
So I just want to say, like me and my so obviously I live with 3 other people, and one of them's like the bodybuilder, like the hench guy. He goes gym like literally every day, but he does have like a day off here and there, but it's pretty much like every day. But he does like light exercise in it. But you know, he goes gym every day. And then he got me and my other friend to actually actively start going. I mean, we wanted to go anyway, but like he drove it into us, like, you know, just fucking go. And like every single time, like going to the gym is bare long, but as soon as like you have the discussion, let's say, okay, cool, let's go gym, that part very long, very tedious, can't be asked to do that. But as soon as he's like, yeah, come, let's go, and then you open the drawer to put trackies on or whatever it is, that's it. You want to go gym, like you're already on that motive. So your brain, it's like, I think what it is, like what I noticed, it's kind of like once you're set on a path, your brain accepts that path, and it's just like, all right, cool, well, let's just go and do it. Which is why, like, when people say, if you can visualize yourself becoming rich, for example, if you like truly believe it, then you will eventually become it. Because like, as soon as, when I'm asking him, there's always the possibility that he says no, and then I'm there like, yeah, no, I can't be asked to go either. But when we say yes, and we actually start going, like when we get in the car and then drive, that's it. Like you're already on the gym motive, so your brain isn't there. Like your brain's not there thinking, oh, this is bare long. It's thinking, oh, I can't wait to be done. But then once you are done, the dopamine that gets released, literally every single time I go gym, at the end of it, we're there like, this is sick. We feel hench, like you feel strong, you feel good. Your brain, it's like it releases tension in your body, and then by releasing that tension, you just like, you release any
stress. It's literally stress.
And like you can, it's like you're able to focus on things which are actually important, rather than having like this kind of brain fog, because you're there like, you know, at the end of the day, I went gym, you know, I feel good, my body's good. So is it really that deep? Probably not. And I feel like that's why, that's one of the variables as to why exercise can also help with depression, because you feel, it's like what you said, you feel that accomplishment, and if you feel that accomplishment, then obviously life can't be that bad. Like in very rough terms, it's kind of like you know that you are capable of doing stuff and you are capable of feeling good, and it's kind of like that reminder that, hey, you know, life's calm, bro.
Yeah.
So
What I will say is, going back to that sort of when you decide that you want to do it, there's no sort of going back in your head. It's like it goes back to that neural pathway in your brain. Like when you form a habit, they say that, you know, it takes like a certain amount of days to form a habit. That's
like,
because
100 hours,
something like that. I don't know, but yeah, that's literally going back to the neurons in your brain that form literally pathways. The more you do it, the more the stronger the signals.
Yeah.
So when you actually start that sort of pathway, it's hard to go back. And also, I have to say, people who grew up in sort of like who had like active childhoods, who engage in sport from a really young age, they have an advantage because, you know, it's sort of ingrained in them from a very young age. It's very easy to do a sport you enjoy, and, you know, engage in that sort of activity, in that sort of world. You know what I mean? Like that for me, I grew up like football was literally all my life.
Yeah.
I had like 7 uncles and all of them literally obsessed with football, so I really didn't have a choice. So it was easy for me to just engage in it. And you find that most people who play some sort of sport or go to the gym, they tend to be more outgoing, more social, more happy, more satisfied with life. And that's not an accident. There's definitely a connection.
Yeah, definitely is. To do with habits, you did remind me. This is quite like a fat key on the fattest things I've ever learned. Yeah. Basically, I'm trying to load up YouTube, but I can't because the internet's very slow. So I'm gonna paraphrase, but it's still that same YouTube channel. What I've learned, it's actually a very, very, very good YouTube channel. I'd recommend it to anyone. It's literally what I've learned. And there's this guy who just learned something and then he says it, but like he has a lot of evidence to back it up. But one of the things he said is
the average brain is made up of 40% gray matter and 60% white matter. White matter lies under the gray matter and is composed of long nerve fibers insulated by myelin sheaths. Myelin is the fatty tissue that makes white matter white, and it's one of the reasons people can get good at things. As you repeat an action, the neurons associated with that action will have their axons wrapped in myelin. So every time you put in an hour of practice, you earn yourself another wrap of myelin around the neurons used for that activity. More myelin means nerve impulses can travel more quickly and efficiently across the axons. This means the action can be done more easily, skillfully, and will require less concentration. A bare, unmyelinated neuron will have a signal speed of about 2 miles an hour. The signal speed of a fully myelinated neuron is about 200 miles an hour. Practice makes perfect because practice makes myelin, and myelin makes perfect.
Yeah, the thing with exercise, actually, I was gonna talk about meditation, but I feel like this is one of the new, what should I call it, experiments that I'm trying to.
Yeah, meditation. I've started trying to meditate as well, to be fair.
You know, I've heard about the purported benefits. So you get like this, or there are different types of meditations, obviously. Well, that wasn't so obvious, but I've heard of this ethereal kind called transcendental meditation.
Okay.
That's the only type I've heard of that you actually have to sort of pay to be a member of, I think.
Pay to meditate.
No, and the thing is, a lot of like really high profile people engage in it as well. I think Seth Meyers is one of the biggest proponents of it.
What is it?
Actually, not Seth Meyers. Beg your pardon. It's like this comedian. What's his name? Jerry Seinfeld. Essentially, the outline of meditation is to be aware of yourself and your thoughts. To look at your thoughts as merely, quote unquote, the monkey mind. So your subconscious just constantly speaking, that little voice in your head just constantly seeing your environment, recalling memories, thoughts, and then adding some sort of judgment to it.
Would you say a good analogy is you have the trainer, then you have the ape. So like you have the ape, which is like the subconscious, like your brain just the animalistic, just do this, do that. But then you have like the trainer, like the conscious cognitive thing, which is like, let me think, and then you think.
that sort of thing. Yeah, that's how I describe it. So that sort of quote unquote the voice in your head, the monkey mind, sort of adding judgments to everything you're thinking about, everything you see, and essentially meditation is the aim is to recognize what it is for what it is, and then letting it go.
Oh yeah, it's kind of like Headspace.
Yeah. Shout out to Headspace.
I get free with my Vodafone contract.
Spotify as well. Yeah, and essentially the point is to reach that inner source of consciousness.
Yeah.
Which is, I think the best way I've heard it been described was by world-renowned neuroscientist Sam Harris. Yeah. He called it being in sort of pure perception. So your sort of sense of self sort of degrades, which sounds like a scary thing, but
so it's like an ego death.
Yeah. So some people go into that stage, that stage through certain drugs like ayahuasca or.
By the way, ego death, as in not the ego that. Well, you have like the super ego, the ego, and the what is it that? You have like a first. Basically, it's like a philosophical, psychological kind of thing. It's not like it is the ego that you're probably thinking of, as in like the audience.
Yeah, Wikipedia describes it as a complete loss of subjective self-identity.
Yeah.
So you basically lose your sense of self, and you become pure perception. So you like everything, your surroundings is basically just that, which. Very, very hard to sort of describe, but
it's hard to describe and imagine if you haven't really experienced it. But I know people who've done acid before, and I feel like on acid if you do a high enough dosage, you have an ego death. But like from what they've said, an acid trip, it kind of like it essentially pauses the ego. Like it just makes you. Well,
pure perception.
So it's like you know how you were saying at the start, that everyone lives in like this bubble, this bubble of perception. Literally, like on LSD, I've heard many people like that. The bubble just breaks down, and essentially you just see the world, as you say, like pure perception, for what it is. And then that's kind of like why a lot of famous people, like Steve Jobs, for example, and like all these other men, like they did acid, and I feel like that really helped them, like, improve their product, their business, their lifestyle, because it gave them that pure perception of how things really are.
Yeah, that's a more extreme sort of mental state of mind to go into, and sometimes like most people only experience that when they take some drugs. But meditation, with meditation, like one of the main benefits that really caught my eye is like the ability to go into this sort of state of mind called quote unquote flow, where you sort of you isolate whatever task you're about to engage in, and nothing else around you matters. And
I heard that. I think it was like Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman.
Yeah, something like that. I've heard that sort of quote somewhere. So when, let's say, you're engaging in some maths problem and you're fully immersed in it, when you are, all you think about is yourself and the problem. So your sense of self actually degrades. So it's your perception and the problem, and what you are at that moment in time is all the mathematical knowledge you have and the problem solving skills you have versus that problem. Like it's a state that I'm still sort of trying to get into, and apparently meditation is the best way to do that. I remember I got from the flow thing I've heard in a book that I was reading about trading.
So obviously I trade like forex currencies, so I just buy and sell currencies in it, long story short. And in the book the guy was saying that trading, you don't get money from actually being good at trading and like knowing all how to draw graphs and like charts and whatnot. You get good at trading by controlling your emotions, because basically the reason why a lot of people lose money in the long run, like 97% I think of all people lose money in the long run trading, is because when they win, they're like quite risk averse, so they take out the profits before they reach their goal. But then when they lose, they stay in the trade, and then they just end up losing more and more and more, because they're like, oh, it's gonna turn back around, and then that never does or whatever. So like, they win a lot less and then they lose a lot more. And his point about the flow thing was that once you separate your existing beliefs, your existing perception of how the markets work, and like let's say you think that they're against you or whatever. Once you separate yourself from that, you can enter the state of flow. So like professional traders, they enter the state of flow, and essentially they see the charts purely for what they are. They're like, okay, cool, this is
no judgment attached.
Yeah,
to
no judgment, no bias, nothing. They just see it and they're like, all right, cool, bang, 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 and there's no distractions. There's no. It's literally just that. It's kind of like I don't know if you've. I mean, I'm assuming you would have experienced flow in some states of your life.
or this one time when I tried modafinil, sorry.
Yes, yeah. Like when I don't know, like as a, because I used to game in this, so like as a gamer, you know, you you get like those days where you start off and you're like quite good, but then like you literally, from the description of flow, you get into that flow state and you become so much better because you're like focusing purely on the game, but you're not like, it's not like you are focusing on the game, you're literally,
it's you and the game that
yeah,
exists.
like I just won,
Yeah.
and then you're purely there in this connection. So like essentially this flow is a very, very key thing if you want to get good at something that you're doing. So like you can apply it for sport, you can apply it for, let's say, trading, you can apply it for literally anything, but like getting in that state is kind of like the state of maximum productivity in a way.
Yeah.
So you're saying meditating can...
Yeah, meditating as well. It's such a, like, it's basically the resistance training for your mind.
Yeah.
Like Buddhists who obviously have loads of experience in meditation, like they have such, well, not a very significant difference in terms of pain tolerance, like a normal person. Like a seasoned meditator has a better, and that's because they can isolate themselves, like their sense of being, from the external stimuli.
Yeah.
So you know, when you're more conscious of your body, the way the fact that your body is just there to perceive things, and when you can distance yourself from it, it sort of encourages that sort of distance, that you're able to tolerate a lot more pain. And apparently there is like there are brain waves in your brain. Obviously your brain
Waves.
has waves has waves, and there's a sort of I don't know the actual wave, but it's a different wave when you're in that state of flow.
Yeah. Is it like an electromagnetic wave?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I don't think
But it's essentially like a different sort of energy.
Literally it's a different state of mind. And it also improves like your ability to empathize with people, which is a strange one for me. I don't understand that. If your sense of being sort of degrades a bit, it's sort of crazy that you can empathize with people a lot more.
I think where it comes from is this is quite mad. It's pretty much like what my perception episode is going to be about. But it's kind of like, I think the reason why it helps you empathize is because it's kind of like, it's once again, it's like that bubble in it of perception. So I'd like to take like a slight tangent to help explain this point a bit, which is Jordan Peterson said that life is incredibly complex, right? So it's an incredibly it's an incredibly complex world. And like an example that he gave is a car. To us, we perceive a car as, okay, cool, that's a thing to get me from A to B, and that's all it is. That's all our car is. Yeah, like it's our baby. You know, you wash it, you clean it, you look after it, whatever. It's a thing. You see it as a tool. You don't see it as the object that it really is. You see it as a tool enough for you to get by. So when the car breaks down and you open up the hood and it's smoking, that's when the real world becomes apparent. So that is the real world. All those little pieces and bits moving together, that's the real world. And his main point was that we do not see the real world for what it is. We see objects and things as simply tools. So like, for example, a car, you don't see it as an engine with metal parts and rubber bobs and seats, whatever. You see it as a thing to get from A to B.
Yeah.
So more detail on this will be covered with a lot more examples in my perception episode, so stay tuned for that. But I feel like by entering the state of flow, if you decrease, or like if you get rid of this bubble of perception, what happens is you are able to take in the other person probably a lot more clearer. So like you go from, so like people obviously, just like the real world, are incredibly complex, and our brains are just physically not able to take in the real world for what it really is, which is why it simplifies things into tools and objects for us, like into tools for us to get by. So when you don't have this perception, essentially like this bubble of bias, memory, whatever, when you encounter another human being, what I feel like the reason why you can empathize more with them is because you don't hear what you want to hear, you don't see what you want to see, you actually get the real world input, rather than it going through this bubble of perception and then being changed into what you think they're saying. So that's probably why.
I don't know what the link is between Buddhists and what the diet is, but they all seem to be very lean for some reason. And so even though like the archetype Buddhist himself is a bit chubby, but every Buddhist I've seen is a bit lean.
Oh,
and
man,
they tend to like
lean American rapper lean.
No.
A bit chubby.
Yeah, they seem to combine meditation and fasting together.
Become fat. Imagine you fast and you become fat.
And fasting together to sort of get to this different state of mind, different perception. And I've tried out once, and I will say from my personal experience, you feel like a sort of different person. Yeah. Like you don't realize how many state of minds you can access just by changing what you do. It's sort of basically drugs without drugs.
Yeah.
And
well, what is a drug? A drug is something that changes your chemistry and your biology. So
that's essentially it. So and just to round up, the reason I thought that this sort of this topic was really important is because that if you have like a general sense that your life has a purpose, or there's a general purpose or an aim you want to achieve, going through your life, the earlier you recognize that you can control your mind, which is the key mediator between you and your reality, the better for you. And the reason is it's important to, especially at this it doesn't matter what age you are, but especially early in your life, is because you get into habits that will stay with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And if you sort of question the habits you have around you, where they come from, if it's because of the culture or the people you have around you, why you do certain things, why you eat the way you eat, why you do things at certain times, that sort of stuff, is you basically conquered yourself in a sort of in a weird way. You become enlightened. You're free from the shackles of your society your perception. So essentially, take control of your life, understand what you do and why you do what you do, and the sort of effect that it has on your mind. And I can't lie, you definitely see a difference in what you want to achieve as well. Definitely. In your life.
One of the I remember I asked you how would you say to anyone who's starting out, like in this sort of analysis of their own actions or whatever, like how would you put someone on a path, this sort of path, and you've answered it pretty much exactly how I think someone else answered it, to be fair. I can't, what I got it from someone else as well is you question everything you do. So there was a study, and basically it was a study on smokers, and what they had two control groups or whatever, I think, or something like that. And basically one of them was told, whenever you want to smoke, just question it. Just be like, don't just cold turkey stop, but just think about why you're smoking. So like you pull it out, and then you're like, okay, cool, so why am I smoking? I'm stressed. And then you're like, you take a toke, and then when you're taking a pull, whatever, when you're actually smoking, just actively think like about what you're doing, think about how it tastes, think about how you feel, think about what caused you to be in that position where you are now finally smoking. And then what they found, I can't remember the number, but it was very, very significant, that most of those people stopped smoking, and they stopped very quickly, because they were like, they understood why they smoked. So it's kind of like the brain realized what it's doing. It
Yeah.
realized why it was doing it, and then it realized that it's bias, and then it found different ways of coping, essentially, with whatever problems they had. And
Yeah.
so questioning what you're doing and why you're doing it is probably like a very good first step into actually.
I think that goes back into sort of meditation as well, because meditation teaches you to be mindful,
Yeah.
like to be present.
Yeah.
You know, when you're engaging in menial tasks, your mind tends to wander off, and not actually your automatic brain tends to just kick in and do what you usually
it's
do
like
without thinking
habit,
about it. Yeah. But you know, when you're sort of mindful of what you do, you're in the present moment, and you're able to, you know, to control yourself in that present moment, especially if you want to quit a habit like smoking as well.
Yeah, exactly. So you take the habit
You take it away from like the
automatic
to
into the manual.
Yeah.
And that is basically the motto of the perception episode, which is quite good. So
Can't wait for that.
Yeah. I'd like to ask a few more things if that's calm.
Yeah,
Because
of
obviously we
course.
started like 12 minutes in this as well. I'll take about like 7, just 5 minutes to back up. But so about meditation. So first of all, I'd like to highly recommend Headspace. Headspace kind of teaches you how to meditate because it's a very nice soft voice. You have the app is very good because you have the app is very good, and I can't be asked explaining every feature, but it's very it's like the best meditation app there is, right? And so what meditation is for those who don't really know what it is, because like I feel like there's a lot of not stigma, but like there's a lot of beliefs about meditation.
Yeah,
which
it's
are
a sort of foreign. It's
Yeah.
an Eastern sort of thing, so it's
Yeah.
not really a Western idea.
Yeah, and like what? So I'd like to just explain to anyone who's not really quite sure about what meditation is and how it helps you get into this flow state and like break down this perception barrier. It's essentially what you can do right now. To be fair, is you can lie down and then you just whatever thoughts come into your mind, don't think about them. Just lie down and then just be there. So one of the things that Headspace teaches you is to focus on your body. So like it focuses on breathing, and this is why breathing is like one of the best meditation tools in a way that a lot of people talk about, because when you focus on the breathing, so for example you count in your head 5 seconds in, so 1, 2, 3, you breathe in, then you hold it for 4 seconds, and you breathe out for 6 or whatever it is. When you focus on the breathing, you kind of link your mind to your body in like this very nice close way where your mind starts to take notice of everything around you. So like you start with the breathing, but then you can like transition into like thinking about, okay, cool, how do my legs feel, how do my arms feel? Like if you're lying down, feel that pressure in your arm like against the bed or the chair or wherever it is. And then, you know, at the start it's going to be quite slow and you're not really going to notice any particular effects, but eventually you will be able to get to a point where you focus on your body, and then whenever you have an idea and your mind starts to think about that idea and wander off, what you do is you naturally go back to breathing, you naturally go back to focusing on the body, and your brain gets accustomed to in that way letting things go and like letting your thoughts just go. And then once you get very good at that, that is essentially what like this meditation, like, you know, quote unquote, is. It's like you have the thoughts, but then you just let them go, and then that, would you say, it's just like a very clear, like gives you a very clear perspective.
Someone quite famous said it sort of reaches to your the source of your consciousness. That's basically just fancy way of saying you're more present and you have a more quieter mind, so you're able to focus on things. You're able to whatever you put your mind to, you're able to stick to it. And you're able to let go of thoughts that you don't need. Like, actually, during my exams, I actually practiced this. I took the risk of wasting time to get into the state. To not get into the state per se, but if you think about it as a state, it's the wrong way to think about it. It's just to get into a state of mind where you're very mindful. So during the exam, I just sort of controlled my breathing. And made myself overly aware that I was sat down and in front of me was a test, and everything that I know will just come to me. So I was just pure perception, like all the worries, all the stress attached to the exam, I just let go, and just be there in the present moment. Like, I used to have this problem a lot when I was in secondary school, in sixth form. Like, for some reason, when I'm in an exam, a song I've not heard in like 5 years will just come to my mind. And it just keep playing it over and over again. Like, you just get distracted. It really helps with your focus. Like, I would say that's like the main benefit of meditation, amongst many others.
Yeah, I feel like it's quite key to also clarify. When we say like you meditate a little bit, you know, you take deep breaths or whatever, and then you allow your thoughts to disappear. It's essentially kind of like, because a lot of people struggle with understanding what it means to just let your thoughts go. But I want to clarify that is the automatic like part of it. So by focusing on your breathing, you make your mind your consciousness rather than singing the 5-year-old song. You focus on breathing, and then by focusing on breathing, your brain
bring yourself back to yourself,
and like you automatically just let things go which aren't necessary because you're focusing on breathing. So like as soon as you stop the breathing, that's when you start focusing on the thoughts. But obviously the more meditation practice you have, the easier it will be to not focus on the thoughts once you stop the breathing, essentially.
What I would recommend though is because I feel like you're doing meditation is such a sensitive thing for your brain. Or in my personal experience, you have to get a lot of things down pat before you can do that. So for example, when I know my diet has been crap or I've not been active for a couple of days, it's a lot harder for me to meditate. Because
would you say it's because you have those thoughts of
I feel like that plays a part. I mean, I have no signs or evidence for that. Again, this is purely my experience. Maybe the science will come out later to explain why. But I feel like when you have when you have your sort of your diet, you're taking care of yourself down pat, meditation comes easier to you. And this is something you have to stick to. Like, it's all about consistency. The more you do it, the better you get at it. Again, you know, it's like going to the gym, but for your mind, to be able to control your mind like that.
Yeah, I'd say if you're looking into practicing meditation, I'd say to literally start off with maybe 5 minutes a day or so. Like even you know, start off with 1 minute a day. Start off with tonight, meditate for 10 seconds. Literally just 10 seconds. Lie down on your bed and take one deep breath. You know, 4 seconds in, hold it for like 3 seconds, and then breathe it out for another 3 seconds. And then that's it. Then tomorrow try 20 seconds. The day after that try 30 seconds, and you'll eventually get into this pattern where it's very easy to, you know, everyone has 10 seconds to meditate. And I'd say like one thing that, because I don't really meditate per se, but what I do is I just lie down and I have a little notepad right next to my, like where my hand would be. And what I do, whenever a thought comes into my head, I just jot it down quickly. So like I don't really like let it go per se, but I just jot it down, because it's usually thoughts like, oh, you need to send that email, like, oh, you need to cook, by the way, or you need to do the washing. So I just write it down, and then after like 10 minutes, my brain feels very, very clear. The fog literally just disappears, and you have a list of things that you need to do, things that are in or directly really stressing your brain out, but because they're not written out objectively, because you can't really see them, that's where the fog comes from, because your brain is trying to think of like way too many things at once. So like, you know, have a notepad, do it like a minute a day, and then as Victory said, you know, try to get your life, you know, somewhat in some sort of order, and then it'll come easier to you.
One advice I've also heard for people starting out with meditation is you don't it's not essential that you sit down and, you know, sort of control your thoughts, all that. Sometimes it could just be like, if you're in the car, just pay attention to the sound of the engine, like listen to it, take everything about it in. If you smell the fumes of a neighboring car, just notice it, but don't add judgment to it. Just look at it for what it is, and then just continue doing that, and then just let it go without any thoughts or attaching anything to it. Essentially just being mindful.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, cool. So I'd like to just quickly give a summary. So thank you very much for coming on. Appreciate it very greatly.
Appreciate that.
So we talked about how important it is for your, you know, how important your diet is, because, you know, there's a very strong connection. I mean, you can summarize the points.
So I talked about the neuroplasticity of your brain, so the physical changes that essentially goes on in your brain throughout your lifetime. your brain is extremely malleable and it's sensitive to the environment you put it into, and certain behaviors and certain reactions can only be stimulated from your environment. And I gave the example of the very primitive example of the fight or flight response, but that's essentially what goes on throughout your life entirely. Every behavior you do will change your brain in some sort of way. And then from then I went on to talk about the brain-gut connection. Your everything you eat and the way you feel, the way your brain operates are extremely linked, more than most people would think. Essentially, be mindful of what you put in your body, the way you fuel your body. I talked about fasting. I'm not advocating for fasting or ketogenic diet. I'm just talking about the benefits you might get from it, depending on who you are. And the main message I'm trying to pass on from this is to be aware of the behaviors and the diets, the things that you do to your body and mind, and how they change the way you want to perceive reality, your life, and how you want to go throughout your life. Then we went on to meditation, a relatively new
phenomenon.
I mean, it's it's a thousands of year old it's a very old practice, but essentially,
Relatively new.
yeah, it's relatively new to people our age. Yeah. It's a relatively new practice for this generation, I guess. Essentially, try it out. See, it would definitely help your mind, control your mind, and my main emphasis at the end, to conclude it all, is that the earlier you realize you're in control of how you perceive your reality and how to do it, the things you eat, the things you do, the behaviors you engage in, the easier it is to control, for lack of a better term, your destiny.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool.
Do we talk about exercise? Or can I? Let me start exercise.
Let's just give it a quick roundup.
All right. Exercise, muy importante. Basically, exercise is the number one drug for your mind, on your body, in the world. Basically, to keep a healthy mind and a healthy body, you need to exercise.
Cool.
Yeah.
So that's it.
That's
Alright,
it.
so thank you very much once again for coming
Appreciate
on.
the opportunity.
No worries. Obviously, we'll find out more to discuss. So I'll probably have you back on again soon.
A better quality this time.
Yeah, of course. We'll have a second microphone, the camera, everything, make it really Joe Rogan-esque.
More information as well.
Yeah, definitely. But the thing is, it is a very discussion-based podcast, which is why I quite like this sort of format, because I have the PGP, which is more like information, but then this is just a discussion kind of thing.
Yeah. Wait, so did you have that conservative guy on this one?
Yeah, on this one. So I'd like to thank everyone for listening. Obviously, hope you got some important keys from this episode, because I definitely did, and I feel like a lot of people will benefit from knowing all the things that Victory talked about. And if you want to come on the episode, obviously just let me know. Give me a list of things that you'd like to talk about, and then we'll sort it out, because I'm open to anything, as long as it's essentially something which you feel people should know. Give me a message and we'll organize episode, no question. Even if you're far away, I can just record it on Discord or Skype or whatever, so that's not an issue. And on that note, thank you very much for listening. Victory's socials, I suppose, will be in the description of the YouTube video, probably, if you want. So thank you for listening, and have a lovely day.